The world is changing, and Destro means to come out on top. But with Cobra Commander breathing down his neck, and mercenaries Xamot and Tomax seeking to dethrone him as the world's premier weapons manufacturer, he'll have to survive the future in order to build it. Stranded in the mountains without any weapons, Destro must survive the Chameleon's wrath. But who is the Chameleon? And why do they want Laird Destro dead?
Don't they realize they're dealing with Destro?
Black leather, arms dealer, silver mask, make you live in fear. Killer robot, gotta go by. All the weapons to kick your butt.
Let us end this farce, there's work to do.
Hey, it's me, Mark, coming to you live and direct once more from the Energon universe. If you are new to Talking Joe, you can find us over on the website, talkingjoe.co.uk. It's the website that tells you all about everyone's favourite comic-focused G.I. Joe podcast. Today, we will be looking at Destro 2 and 3, released July the 17th and August the 21st, 2024. We will be going into lots of detail, so warning, despoilers ahead. Did you see what I did there?
See what you did there.
Joining me, as always, he's taken off his metallic chrome faceplate so that you can hear him better. It's a real American Tim. It's Tim Finn.
Hello, Mark, and hello, listeners.
So, Tim, we are doing another episode where we're tackling 2 episodes of an Energon Universe title in a row. They keep on releasing these things, and, we have to try and cram them into our schedule, as well as doing all of the other stuff. So, 2 issues again, Destro 2 and 3.
Presumably, things will slow down when all these miniseries aren't running concurrently, and there's just one monthly G.I. Joe book, right, in the Energon universe, right? It'll just be one?
Well, that we know of so far. At the moment, as of November, all we know is that there's going to be a G.I. Joe title, G.I. Joe issue 1. Destro and Scarlet will have come to an end. Void Rivals is getting a little bit more G.I. Joey, so we might see a bit more in there. But there's nothing been indicated as to anything that will fill the gap of 2 issues a month. But given how successful they have been, I imagine it is only a matter of time before we find out about more future G.I. Joe comics content from Skybound.
Yes, I imagine that they are trying to balance wanting to make more money and tell more story and generate more excitement, particularly while everyone's eyes are focused on them. This is the kind of scenario with the big splash that Transformers and Duke and Void Rivals and then all these subsequent comics have made. You can imagine a scenario where Skybound grabbed writers and artists and did additional issues and specials, or even, invented a 5th miniseries to somehow fit in there before G.I. Joe #1. This did not happen. I'm not saying this did happen, but you can see a scenario where, a publisher or a recording outfit or a broadcaster might do this. On the other hand, it's a lot of effort to have 2 series running at the same time. It's twice the writers, twice the artists and colorists and letterers, and approvals. And it might be really important for the team and the pipeline to catch a break. And when Scarlet and Destro wrap up for some months, to just have G.I. Joe get published monthly, and also to give the readers, the buyers, a break. Comics aren't cheap, and Skybound may be aware that as excited as everyone is, the thrill might peak, and people might need to sort of calm down, and their wallets might need to calm down. Just give me that one monthly G.I. Joe until the inevitable crossover or event.
Yeah, and we've got previews out as far as November at the moment, so that there's preview information for G.I. Joe issue 1 in November, and G.I. Joe: A Real American Hero, and the return of Chris Mooneyham on 311 ARA in November as well. So It's just 1 month off that we know of for sure so far. It could quite easily be the case that we get to the December solicits and there's another book, but it's giving the new G.I. Joe 1 title at least a month's breathing room to be the new newly launched Energon Universe title.
Right.
Okay, so looking back at Destro, this was brought to us by the creative team of writer Dan Waters, artist Andrei Bressan on issue 2, and Andrea Milana, the Cobra Commander artist, on issue 3. Colorist for both is Adriano Lucas, letterer Russ Wooton, editor Ben Abernethy, logo and publication design Andres Juarez, and production Richard Mercado.
Let's have a look at the covers in the gallery.
Yeah, the cover to Destro number 2A is drawn by Bressan and colored by Lucas, the interior team. Destro is, he takes up the bottom half of the cover. There's some twist to his spine. We see him waist up. His teeth are gritted. He's got a big pistol. He's at the ready. He's looking askance. Behind him are several limping yet still dangerous, though damaged and on fire bats walking toward us from the flame. The top 2/3 cover background is all yellow, orange, red, very active inferno. And then in the distance, just above and behind Destro, are Tomax and Xamot, and each of them have what looks like an Uzi. And so the story of this cover is, it's a little, I don't know if the word is unclear, because I don't know that it has to be clear. I don't know that this needs to be a specific story, because in the story of this issue, you know, Tomax and Xamot their forces are fighting the bats, and the bats are on the side of Destro. And here it sort of looks like all of these bad guys are on the same side, and some other adversary is off panel, off cover. I don't mind that at all, that the cover gets that a little bit oblique or confused in terms of, you know, sort of partial pinup, cool image, and partial story representation of the insides. It's just a cool drawing, and it certainly has, you know, marquee characters. And if you've only ever seen G.I. Joe covers, not insides of issues, you haven't seen sort of scary zombie damaged bats like this before. So there's a great mood here. There's just a lot of danger and concern and gloom. Cover B is drawn and colored by Raleigh Rossmo, who's been doing Harley Quinn and work at DC in the last couple years. This one is a cartoonier take on Destro and Tomax and Xamot. This one is almost a portrait of Destro. His head and face take up 2/3 of the cover. There's no background. There's just a little bit of black on the top and bottom. On the top, that's actual background. On the bottom, that must be bits of his chest. There's his red collar and just a little bit of his collarbones and skin under his neck. We are a little higher than him, or his head is sort of bowed forward and he's looking straight up on at us. He's glaring. His eyes are, you know, black with little red dots, and reflected in the forehead of his mask are Tomax and Xamot pointing guns at him. So in this cover, we are either... I don't actually think we are Tomax and Xamot in this cover. I think we're between Destro and Tomax and Xamot. This is sort of striking for how flat the red of the collar is, even though there's some rendering going on in the silvery metallic of the faceplate, the helmet, and there are some really thick lines that Rossmo is using to define Destro's cheekbones, his nose, the bottom of his chin. And I do like his cartooning that he brings to, quote, regular superhero comics. He drew a Batman and the Shadow crossover miniseries for Dynamite and DC about 5 years ago. And that's not the only time he's worked on Batman. Cover C, which is the 1:10 ratio variant, is drawn and colored by Nicola Cismegia. This is who is this? Is it Xamot or Tomax?
It's not completely clear if that's a scar on his face or just a
Well, I should know based on which side his collar and his shoulder armor is, which diagonal his sash goes. You know, if it starts from the left shoulder or the right shoulder. But anyway, this is one of the twins. He takes up 2/3 of the cover. He's big and looming, head to waist. He is illuminated from behind by a lightning bolt. So there's a lot of light blue and sort of medium electric blue on him. On the bottom of the cover are 6 Crimson Guard with weapons. They're standing somewhat at the ready. They're not rushing. They're not running. And there are a lot of sort of diagonals in this cover that keep it active, even though it's just one of these twins standing there and just some CGs standing there. Tomax or Xamot's head is cocked. All of the Crimson Guards are to an extent angling up to the left or up to the right. Behind everyone is this giant, looks like maybe a steel beam. Do you see something that I don't see here?
Well, I'm looking at the cover to number 3, which is part of this interconnecting cover set. Yes. So I know that it's the helmet to Cobra Commander coming across.
Oh, right, excellent. Yes. Okay. Yes. What Mark just said.
This cover for me slightly lets itself down by this character. Tomax or Xamot, whichever one it is, being a little bit off-center. It feels like maybe the cut has been taken in slightly the wrong place.
Yeah. Doing a quick check of the action figure, and Tomax does have his collar on that side. So, and since I don't see a really obvious scar, I'm going to say this is Tomax. This is one of those covers that you start to think it might connect with another cover, and therefore its composition is not as strong as it could be. I think if all the same elements were here, but this cover were just drawn by itself and weren't going to connect, the artist would have composed Tomax a little differently. But it's a fun and exciting drawing. Cover D, the 1 in 25 variant, is Tomax. This is that explosion back, which alludes to the 1980s toy packaging, a Hector Garrido style 4-color. I mean white, yellow, orange, red. I don't mean 4-color in comics. I mean 4 different colors. I guess it's technically 5. Tomax is leaning forward a bit. He's got a submachine gun in one hand and a curvy dagger in the other. And I am just starting to track Jeff Spoke's work. I don't know where I have seen it, except some covers here and there, but his stuff is crisp and precise, and his drawing style and his line work and his spotting of blacks very much reminds me of Ryan Sook, who is about to draw a Black Canary miniseries for DC, and 2 years back did a Blue Beetle and Booster Gold miniseries for DC. And Ryan Sook has always, to me, had a lot of Adam Hughes in his work, like precision and faces. So if I didn't know this artist, I might think, oh, that looks a little bit like Adam Hughes. Considering that we've now seen several different artists take on this kind of 1 in 25 variant cover for the Energon universe, where it's one character and there's that, 1982 toy package style explosion behind them. This one feels right up there with the best of them, right? It's a cool drawing. There's some personality. I like the pose. The 1 in 50 cover, which is cover E, is drawn and colored by Yasmin Putri, who I have not really read any comics by, but I have been keeping track of because of work for this DC Elseworlds miniseries, Dark Knights of Steel, which has Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman in like medieval times. Putri has done all the covers and drew most of that first miniseries. I was pretty excited when I saw her name attached to any G.I. Joe related covers. But I have to say, this cover for Destro number 2, it doesn't quite work for me because it doesn't pass the silhouette test. if you black out Destro, his pose only half makes sense because of the way that his left leg, the leg on the right, is composed and foreshortened. He sort of looks, short and stumpy. In terms of the sort of logical description of this cover and the background, there's a lot I like about this cover. The smoke, the flamey smoke that becomes a cobra in the background, the sort of ancient or medieval style ruins behind Destro, the fact that we are looking up at him. Really like the red and the rendering on the Crimson Guardsman helmet, which Destro is placing that forward boot on. And the top half Destro, I do like how he's drawn, but the sort of the way that his legs are done doesn't work for me. Mark, are there retailer covers you want to talk about?
There is a Gotham City Limits retailer exclusive for both 2 and 3. I'm assuming actually all of the series, because it's an interconnecting cover. Issue 2 has got an image by Tyler Kirkham of the Crimson Twins, and issue number 3 has got a cover which is spotlighting Chameleon.
All right, jumping over to Destro number 3. Cover A is, again, by the regular interior team of Andrei, Bressan, and Adriano Lucas, although, as Mark mentioned, Bressan does not draw the interior of this issue. This is Destro and Chameleon in profile grappling in battle. He's on the left, teeth gritted. She's on the right. She's has her right arm up with a dagger covered in blood, as if she has already stuck it into him. He's knocking her arm out of the way while with his right hand firing with a pistol, which she's knocking out of the way. Behind them are some indications of smoke and debris, but it's not clear, but it doesn't need to be. That's not a criticism. This cover is just very much about these two characters, and then the sort of diagonal up left of the smoke and the sort of diagonal upright of the yellow fire smoke. This is the kind of cover that you might say, oh, there's no background, but I think it works, and B, I really do like how the covers to Destro 1 and 2 and 3, I'm talking about A covers, look at my store on the new comics rack next to each other, because they're all different but eye-catching. That cover to number 1 and the cover to number 3, the colors are more similar, but the sizes of Destro and the compositions are so different. And then the color to 2 in the middle pops. Again, Destro is a different size, different position, different pose. But, you sort of go grayish, orange, grayish, and they are fun together. Destro number 3, cover B, and again, all A and B covers are open to order. Your local comic shop can order as few or as many as it wants. This one is drawn and colored by Carl Kerschel, who has done a little bit of covers now for the Energon universe. And I'm really excited to see him draw Destro. Kerschel, everything he does is great. Gotham Academy, the Flash serial in Wednesday Comics, Isola for Image Comics, which is creator owned. I've always wanted Carl Kerschel to draw some G.I. Joe. I don't love this cover. It is a good drawing. Destro's head feels a little small for how big his body is. I think some of this is sort of the foreshortening, but it is a good drawing. It's sort of not the dream Destro drawing by Carl Kerschel I was hoping for.
Yeah, it sort of puts you a little bit in mind of some of the manga type exaggeration of, I don't know, something like Fist of the North Star or something like that, where the head's a little bit smaller and the body's a little bit bigger.
Yeah, looking at a thumbnail of this, I might think it's Joe Madureira. The actual styling of the sort of actual cartooning of Destro's, his eyes, his eyebrows, his nose, his mouth, and then again, yet the size of his head to his torso. So not really a background here. There's some white which is behind the two submachine guns, which I think is implying that they're firing. Most of the rest of the background is red, and then sort of at the very bottom, fifth of the cover behind his waist is a light red, which I think is supposed to be smoke. Destro is a little bit underlit here from the front with some sort of greenish grays. He's hunched forward, smiling, grimacing, with both arms thrust forward, holding these two big guns sort of at us, past us. A fun cover, not my favorite cover. Cover C, which is 1:10 ratio, again, connecting to that issue 2, cover C, that Mark corrected me on, also drawn and colored by Nicola Cismezija, is Chameleon. She's got her weight shifted onto 1 foot, even though she's cropped. We only see her from head to waist, but she's got one shoulder's up a little bit, and then her opposing thigh is sticking out a little bit, or her hand is on her waist. Behind her is Cobra Commander's mask. I don't think this cover quite works for a couple reasons. I like the color and the lighting, but basically everything just becomes violet and purple with some magenta. There's some sort of atmospheric smoky stuff behind Chameleon, sort of white and purple and beige. But I'm sort of losing that it's actually Cobra Commander's silver battle mask because of how big it is and how sort of the defining information, where the silver part becomes the blue shell part, is cropped or covered by the logo. And I don't see his neck. I don't see his shoulders. So, and then similarly, sort of what I like about Chameleon's costume so much, particularly on the A cover, is that some of it is dark blue or dark gray, and then some of it is red. And in this cover, the dark part and the red part become so similar that it looks a little bit like she's just one color.
I wonder on this cover whether that Cobra Commander mask is meant to be sort of almost lost a little bit, because it is a little bit spoilery, that it is very much thematically indicating that Cobra Commander is the man behind Chameleon. Which maybe, we can sort of make a guess at from the story, in the interiors, but it's still a bit of a mystery, and maybe this is sort of just pushing that idea a little bit more strongly than it needs to. But yeah, certainly when I first saw this image, I don't think I quite realized that was Cobra Commander behind Chameleon, that it was maybe just a bit of background. But yeah, when you see, you definitely see.
Cover D is the 1:25 ratio variant. Here is Xamot. He's got the same weapons as the previous issue cover D, Tomax 1:25 variant.
Yeah, which is the classified toy weapons.
Okay, thank you. This is not a mirror image pose of Tomax from the previous issue cover, but it is somewhat a mirror image. This is a different artist. This one is drawn by Miko Suyan and colored by Rex Locus. Miko Suyan is an artist who I know by name, and I recognize sort of the style of, but I don't track. I don't follow work by this artist. I just see this artist's name pop up, in catalogs, particularly for covers, every month. Whereas the previous issue, Jeff Spoke's cover, is much more about spotting blacks and open fill for color, right? Like the complexion on Tomax's face and arm, the red of the sash, the blue of the highlights. Those are done completely with color. Miko Suyan, to my eye, always appears to render like with charcoal or grease pencil or pencil, to not just sort of draw a line in pencil and then ink it, but also to go in and shade with pencil or charcoal, which gives this is not a criticism. I'm not frowning here. I'm just trying to be descriptive, which gives sort of a textured or dirty look to the art, which is really striking. I think with some color artists, this artist's work can end up becoming a little over-rendered or muddy, but this is a striking image of Xamot. And then, oh man, saving the best for last. And I have lightly dreamed of Eric Canete drawing some G.I. Joe for 15 years now. I think even before that Amazing Iron Man, enter the Mandarin miniseries that he drew. Even before that Luke Cage New Avengers miniseries that he drew. Eric Canete draws in this sort of extended, exaggerated, almost Egon Schiele, if you don't know what that means, think Eon Flux, style where his characters are often like a little taller and a little stringier and a little cartooned. Eric Canete has drawn cover D for Destro number 3. That's the 1 in 50 variant. This appears all digitally painted. I'm not seeing sort of pencil and then ink outlines with color fill. I'm just seeing digital colors everywhere. Oh man, this cover. Okay, so it's a battle scene. Destro is center, but a little bit in the distance. He is pointing his wrist rockets at us. Behind him are some bats sort of rushing up from behind him towards the good guys. The good guys are some unknown U.S. Soldiers. They look like sort of modern U.S. desert army soldiers based on their weapons and their gear and their colors. And then in the immediate foreground on the right side is Hawk in his full, I'm going to guess classified, but to me I'm seeing a slightly expanded 1986 version 2 costume with his, brown jacket with the sheep wool collar and his helmet and the goggles. He's got a pistol, but in that sort of classic, I didn't even know who invented it. Frazetta? I don't know. But there's this fun trope in covers where when you have a battle scene, particularly if it's like ogres or monsters or orcs, and they're all rushing your hero who's a little bit in the distance, you put one of them all the way in the foreground on the left side or the right side, turning back and looking at you as if to say, let's go get him. You see lots of artists do this. And I don't think this is done to be funny or fun. I think this is done because this is sort of a desperate fight, and Hawk is sort of calling to us and the other soldiers there. We got to stop this guy. Canete draws these characters all a little wide, right? I had mentioned, Egon Schiele and Eon Flux and sort of tall and stringy. His cartooning is just built on so much knowledge of design and anatomy and cartooning and exaggeration. And his Destro here is like in sort of a Michael Golden way, like a tiny, tiny bit shorter than normal, but a tiny bit wider than normal, right? And similarly, you look at his Hawk face and that mouth is sort of bigger and wider than normal. His eyes are set a little farther apart than would be anatomically correct, because Canete is exaggerating because he's cartooning.
Just talking about the look of Hawk's expression here, I was looking at Eric Canete's Twitter feed where he occasionally will share details on work in progress and all that kind of thing, and he's got a close-up of Hawk's mouth, and he's saying, and what is written is, "The lady sitting next to me on the plane must have thought I was nuts as I was turning layers on and off and muttering, overbite, underbite, overbite, underbite, overbite."
I'll just add one more thing about the drawing itself. The background is a bold red. There's a little bit of, is it smoke or flags or debris in the distance, sort of behind Destro and the logo? There's a little bit of light red and a little bit of sort of cool gray. It's sort of flappy and flowy, which makes me think. Yeah.
I think it's that bat to the right of Destro holding a flag.
Okay, yes, thank you. Okay, the bat to the right of Destro is holding a flagpole, which has a flag. Okay. And there are sparks flying, which adds a little depth and interest to this otherwise flat red. But what's really exciting about all this color is that none of it is super bright or overpowering. None of it is oversaturated. And the rendering is all done really thoughtfully, and the light sources are all done really thoughtfully. Canete leads your eye, and nothing is here that doesn't need to be. And there's a lot of stuff that has been stripped out of this, even though there's a lot going on in this cover. I really actually wish this was the A cover, because to me, this is like a pinnacle of what a G.I. Joe comic book should look like. And as a fan, it's like what I sort of want and deserve for, a brand that has had, Zek and Golden and some of the best covers ever. And certainly the cover, a cover pops and people will grab it off the shelf at a store. But cover E also does that and is just an excellent drawing by a real master. I think Canete has a day job in gaming, which is why he doesn't draw comics anymore. And oh man, is that comics loss.
And just to note as well that he did, I think, 3 covers in the same month. So he also did Scarlet cover 3 and also a Transformers cover. Transformers issue 6 cover D, if you're looking for it.
Oh man. I'm assuming there is no original on 11x17 Bristol for this, that, it started with a small sketch on paper or is completely digital.
This looks like it was digital. Yeah.
If this cover were somehow all on Bristol, I would think, do I need to go buy this? Do I need to track down the original arts and see how much it's going for?
Yeah, a lot of these Energon covers have had an art drop from Felix Liu, the art dealer, in the week of recording. So a few of these, including the Riley Rossimo from issue 2, went up for sale. And it being Felix and him always being very good at drumming up excitement for the covers, and rightfully so. I think most of these sold out pretty quickly. Okay. So what is the story all about? Last time we covered issue 1, which culminated in Destro's arm fair in Darklonia being attacked.
Oh, maybe Eric Canete is no longer working at a game studio, because I'm at his ArtStation page and it says interested in full-time employment. Maybe that's why there's so many covers and amazing commissions and pinups for sale on the internet.
Plot breakdown.
In the aftermath of the drone strike on the Darklonian Arms Fair, Destro has reached the conclusion that Tomax and Xamot of Extensive Enterprises are behind the attack, using cloaking on the combat drones that were used. He vows to raze them to the ground. In New York, the twins describe the incident as a false flag attack set up by Destro himself. Mars has the superior firepower, Extensive Enterprise the superior manpower. There is a tit-for-tat series of attacks on the Crimson Guard training ground by Destro and on the Mars Bat Factory by the Crimson Twins. Destro invites the Powleys to the scrap heap of empires to parley and avoid ruin on both sides. Ultimately, the CEOs agree that they will focus more on corporate warfare than physical combat. Destro returns to his family crypt in the Scottish Highlands, a location only known to himself. He goes there to seek counsel from his ancestors. But outside, a lone assassin, Chameleon, waits for him in the mountains and shoots him as he exits. They fight, and he flees in a despoiler but is shot down. Meanwhile, at Mars Industries, Mercer and Scrap Iron examine the buzzard drones that attacked Darklonia, noticing the similarity of the tech to the battle android troopers. Mercer begins to suspect that there is more to the attack than meets the eye, and that the Powleys were not behind it. Destro crawls from the wreckage of his despoiler and tracks his way across the Scottish mountains to a United States Air Force base and demands to speak to General Flagg. Destro tells Flagg a story of the origins of his mask. Destro knows the value that he has to Flagg in supplying arms, and begrudgingly, Flagg agrees to listen to Destro's demands. So, Tim, for me, very much a tale of two issues. Quite different issues, quite different art, quite different stories.
Yeah, I liked both. I think in a good way, these feel like distinct chapters of a 5-issue miniseries. It doesn't feel like 3 is just doing the next thing that was already happening in 2. It feels like a different angle, a different approach. So 2 is very much about Destro versus Tomax and Xamot. And 3 is very much about Destro not talking, but fighting with Chameleon.
Mm.
And then on top of that, different artists.
Mm-hmm.
And I have been wondering why Andrei Bressan does not draw issue 3 of Destro. And an early thought was, oh, well, maybe someone higher up wanted an artistic change, and Bressan is not coming back to finish this series. But in fact, he is, which makes me think it's the sort of normal, scheduling change. Maybe someone got sick, maybe someone had a baby, maybe someone was really slow. I don't mean Bressan, I mean a writer, an editor, someone doing approvals at the rights holder company. And maybe by the time Bressan was going to be drawing issue 3, they already needed to be getting ready for issue 4. And so, they call in someone else so that they can keep the rest of the book on schedule. I don't know, but I am a little curious that no one has said anything. And I think that's because there's no story here. I think, someone had the flu. This is a guess. And misses 10 days. And it's like, all right, we'll just have you do the next issue. And we'll get the guy who did the other series that's very related to this. But I note that in the letters page of issue 2, they don't say, Andrei did such a great job on this issue, and we're giving him a break, but you'll see him back for issue 4. And they don't say in the letters page of issue 3, hey, everyone, welcome Andrea and Milana back from the Cobra Commander series. He's helping pinch hit for regular artist Andrei Bressan, who will be back next month. It's like, don't you love seeing Milana's work? It's like, we hope to have him back in the Energon universe. And I know this is a different editor than A Real American Hero, but there has been so much attention paid on that book to, hey, the guy's drawing the book. Oh, he's going to take a break. Hey, this other artist is drawing the book. That other artist, the first one's coming back. Mm-hmm. So I don't think there's a conspiracy. I don't think there's any controversy. It's just a little surprising considering how tight a ship Skybound has run. The books have been on time. They've all looked great. It's all been good art, good color, good lettering, good design. And the creative teams have been consistent. And if you think to other Skybound comics, name a Skybound comic that had a fill-in issue. I don't think you can. Sort of the closest you get is 6 issues into The Walking Dead, the artist changes, and then that next artist stays on for 175 issues. Or when The Walking Dead goes from monthly to bi-weekly, it gets an inker.
Yeah. But a lot of Skybound, when we think of Skybound, we are thinking of something that's more akin to sort of creator-owned work. And,
yes.
And interestingly enough, it's the final order cut-off week for Birthright Deluxe Edition, book 1 this week, the hardcover, which collects the first 25 issues of writer Joshua Williamson's and artist Andrei Bressan and Adriano Lucas, their epic, I suppose, which ran for 50 issues. So this is an artistic team, Andrei Bressan and Adriano Lucas, that have delivered a significant chunk of work. So yeah, somewhat surprised. That will be the reason that they're a name that they've gone to, because of that working relationship with Joshua Williamson and Skybound. But yeah, he clearly an artist that has been able to deliver a significant chunk of comics work up to this point in time.
I do like Bressan's work on Destro 1 and 2. I do like Milana's art more. There's more exaggeration and a little more sort of dynamism and exaggeration and sort of diagonals and snap and stretch to movements and sort of flourishes. So when this fill-in was announced, I thought, oh, cool. That's not the artist I would have picked. I think you could find an artist who draws a little bit more sort of static and statuesque like Bressan. But what a cool pick, because it's sort of a lateral move. It's like the Destro series follows from the Cobra Commander series. Let's get the guy who drew the Cobra Commander series. Like I wouldn't be surprised if Andrea Milana draws more Energon universe. After the first arc of G.I. Joe, some other related comic. And I was sort of worried that the difference would really stick out, that the way that they draw and the way that they pose characters and draw action is pretty different, and that it wouldn't at all ruin my reading experience, but it would, I would be aware of the change. And I really like the consistency so far of each of these miniseries as units, even like a 6-issue chunk for the first half of Transformers, and then a 6-issue chunk so far for the second half. And a lot of continuity is kept between Destro 2 and 3 because the color artist is the same. And also there's a lot of obscured stuff going on in issue 3 because it's two people fighting in the snow. And that sounds like a joke, and I don't really mean that as a joke.
And probably just a coincidence, but if you were an artist trying to draw an issue quickly, then it would be a big favour from the writer if they could draw an issue that is set just against snowy backgrounds, not lots of complicated architecture and different scenes, etc., and maybe just two main characters fighting against that snowy background. Not having to have lots and lots of figures on each page and having to look up lots of different references, etc. Again, like I say, probably just a coincidence, but it must have helped with deadline pressures.
I've also wondered, I'm an art guy, and I will, as you all know, I will spend minutes and minutes picking, apart one little detail of a panel. And I think of Dave, who works at my comic book store 3 days a week, who's very much a writer and story guy. And sometimes we'll talk about comics and I'll say something like, oh yeah, I don't love the art in this book. And that will have completely gone past him. He's sort of not seeing the art as like a good or a bad thing. His comment might be, oh, I really like how Kitty Pryde wants to go home in this story. It's X-Men in this example. I feel like the motivation was really there for her. Or, oh, I don't think this writer is treating this character the way that previous writers had. Or, oh, I thought the ending was a cop-out. And a couple times Dave has said something to me that he has a hard time telling artists apart. And he doesn't have, like, at his mental fingertips sort of, a list of like 20 or 50 comics artists who he can just see like a face and say, oh yeah, that's John Byrne, or oh yeah, that's Mike Zeck or whatever. And it makes me realize that there are all types of comics readers out there who are paying attention to different aspects of these things. Just as there are comics buyers who are collectors who, want all the covers, or they want all the issue number ones, or they love Destro, so they want all the Destro stuff. And maybe they're buying these and not reading them at all, or not opening them and really poring over them. And so I sort of wondered what percentage of readership of this miniseries even noticed a difference from issue 2 to issue 3 in the art. Again, you get a lot of continuity for the same color artist. And, some people, it's like all the Star Wars movies had a score by John Williams until Solo, right? Was that the first one that didn't have a score by John Williams? And certainly if like the main Star Wars theme shows up,
Rogue One was the first Star Wars film without John Williams.
Right. Okay. I don't know that I could listen to that score without knowing ahead of time it's not John Williams and say, oh, this isn't John Williams. But certainly there are people who have the ear for that. So anyway, good job, Skybound, getting a very talented artist who I like to do this villain issue.
Okay. Very good. Yeah, I think, as you say, I think it helps that change of artist, the fact that these issues are written as issues that can be taken as an issue in itself, and a kind of almost a story with a beginning, middle, and end, without it being just a stand. The beginning of issue 3 is the end of issue 2, which does happen, I guess, from from the last page, but very much they are stories that can stand in their own right as an individual story, as well as a kind of cohesive whole. So that we are seeing a whole story being told in issue 2 and a whole story being told in issue 3 helps with that change in artist.
I had sort of wondered if all of issue 3 was going to be a flashback, and that would be sort of an even better explanation for having a different artist. It almost doesn't matter because this isn't the present day stuff, and some of the issues a flashback.
Right. So starting with issue 2, kind of what struck me about this is there's the kind of the back and forth and the mirroring of Destro's story with the Tomax and Xamot stories. You've kind of got page 1 is Destro in Darklonia talking to kind of his troops. Second page, it's New York City, Tomax and Xamot doing the same. Then the third page is kind of half and half. Literally, the top section of the page is split down the middle. So they're kind of using that twin. And then as you progress through the story, it's kind of that tit for tat, as I say, an attack on the Crimson Guards, then mirrored by attack from the Crimson Guards onto Destro. And I couldn't see this without thinking in part about G.I. Joe Cobra Special, which was released in 2009 from Costa Gage and Fuso, which was this particularly special issue focused on Tomax and Xamot, which was very much using that kind of mirror image device of splitting the story and mirroring almost panel by panel the front from front to back. So this isn't an episode where we're going to devote lots of time to Cobra Special number 1, but I just wanted to mention it in passing as an issue that does that mirroring particularly well.
I agree, Mark. I noted immediately, on page 2, the mirror image parallel storytelling in Destro 2, and thought it was great.
And then so we've kind of got this Destro attacks, Crimson Guards attacks. They're kind of at a standstill before they kind of come to the realization that they're going to wipe each other out without any real benefit, and then try and have a parley to see if they can sort of find a way through it that isn't going to cost them everything. And as they're doing this, I think it is sort of done quite deftly. You can kind of see the writing doing a lot of heavy lifting here, and a lot of dialogue here that works very well without, or exposition that works well but doesn't overload the page.
Yeah, I think Dan Watters has a nice balance of words and pictures, stuff happening, and also, sort of moments and smaller pauses. I was surprised when Destro and Tomax and Xamot do get to this parlay, and Tomax says, "What are you proposing?" And I thought, okay, and in my peripheral vision, 3 panels later, I see Tomax put his hand out for a handshake, and I thought, oh, this is the truce. Okay, I guess their conflict only lasts an issue and a half. And actually, what Destro says is, no, we're going to go to war, but we're going to do it without collateral damage. I will destroy you and take your company. And they say, no, we'll destroy you and take your company. And I thought, oh, that's awesome.
I had this one as a kind of a light error detected, because one of the twins is putting out his hand here to shake Destro's hands, and he says, "It will happen the other way. We will dismantle Mars and equip our troops with everything you have built. You will be a footnote in our success." And reaches out his hand for a handshake, and then Destro goes in for the reciprocal handshake to agree, but actually says, "Very well then, gentlemen, to the death, without collateral damage." So I was thinking, if someone gives you an offer like that and you go in for a handshake, I think you need to be very clear before you start shaking that you are not agreeing.
But I mean, they're agreeing to part of it. Here's my error detected. They are shaking with their left hands. Is that something that Scottish or where are the twins from? Corsica? Is Is that how people in Scotland and Corsica?
Well, depending on the twin, maybe one of them shakes with their left hand and one of them shakes with the right hand.
You know what? You know what I think it is? I think because they're meeting on the scrap heap of empires, which I think is inspired by that giant floating continent of garbage in the Pacific Ocean.
Yeah.
I don't think. I'm sure there are also big clumps of floating sort of actual metal and wreckage and planes and ships and stuff. But I think Dan Waters has invented something for this story. I think actually what's happening in this panel is there's a mirror that's a part of one of these sort of dismantled, exploded, jeeps or cranes or tanks or something. And we're actually just looking at one of the twins and Destro shaking with their right hands in a reflection.
Well, I like my exclamation. I think that Tomax and Xamot, they're as kind of mirror images. So one of them will shake with their left hand, one of them will shake with their right hand. So we've got the twin here who shakes with his left hand, and he's reaching out first. And because he is the one that instigates the handshake, Destro has to reciprocate with a left-handed handshake. And also, I guess, if you're going into the mythology of the left hand, the sinistra, coming from the etymology of sinister, by shaking in a sinister way with their left hand, it's indicating that this is a somewhat devious agreement that maybe they won't fully honor.
Sure.
I also like the invention of a location here. It's in the grand tradition of G.I. Joe of inventing locations and having this scrap heap of empires where all of the carcasses of the weaponry from centuries past are kind of dumped is a nice and it's a fun. It's an interesting concept.
Yeah, I do wish that that first page, which shows it was a little clearer visually. All the stuff that we're looking at. I like the color. I like the shapes. I like the shadows. But the shapes seem like, background stuff rather than more specific tires and treads and wings and, bolts. And you get some of that after the page turn. But Destro sure does explain what this place is over 2 word balloons. And I wonder if another artist would have found a way to arrange this first page at the scrap heap of empires, giving enough space for the lettering, for the characters to sort of, act and move in this space, to have this nice establishing panel, but also to sort of be close enough or detailed enough that you'd see, like part of a plane and part of a ship and part of a so-and-so. I guess that this is a landmass or an island, and it has stuff on it, right? Yeah. This is not like the Great Pacific floating trash continent, which is entirely floating.
Yeah, that's my interpretation. You've got actual physical geographic cliffs here and just lots of stuff being dumped on it. Okay.
Interesting about this issue, and I'm trying to remember if we saw it in issue 1, but Crimson, I guess we did. Crimson Guardsmen here are on duty as soldiers in the field going into battle, which is something that G.I. Joe continuity since 1985 has been a little iffy on, that Crimson Guardsmen live in your city undercover, and they live in Springfield, and in their closet is a red uniform that I guess they put on when your city gets taken over, or they're called to, the invasion of Springfield to defend it because they live next door to Springfield. And in a lot of G.I. Joe animation, you'll see Cobra soldiers and CGs running. You'll see Vipers and CGs running. But I think between that Larry Hama description for the original file card for the 85 figure, the fact that 1 or 2 episodes of the cartoon does actually have that visual of a person with a red CG uniform in their closet, and they're just seemingly normal otherwise. And my brother and I were always struck by the shot in G.I. Joe the movie, the animated one, where as Serpentor hardens himself from the imminent visit from Pythona, who's making her way through the Terradrome, that final bit of people guarding and protecting Serpentor are not 2 Cobra soldiers, not 2 Vipers, but 2 CGs who stand in front of Serpentor and cross their bayonets. And I feel like that was always, whether conscious or unconscious, I always felt like that was a little bit of an allusion to the Emperor's Guard in Return of the Jedi.
Right, yeah.
The fancy guys in red, who don't talk.
Yeah.
They're going to guard Serpentor. And I'm trying to think, in IDW G.I. Joe comics, sort of the IDW continuity and also the, Hama Real American Hero one. I don't think we've really seen Crimson Guardsmen with machine guns trying to blow up bats and getting blown up by bats.
Yeah, I think possibly a little bit in the first Civil War.
Okay.
From Marvel, that I think the Crimson Guard might have been a faction in there, but as you say, a sort of different kind of role to how it's being presented here, where they are described as one of the largest private armies of the world, and so the military arm of an extensive enterprises, and they're showing this differentiation between Destro's side being stealing the march on hardware and tech, whereas boots on the ground is the Crimson Twins who have the advantage.
I have another sort of G.I. Joe difference here, which I'm trying to remember if we also saw in issue 1. But in this Destro miniseries, the Despoiler is not a one-of-a-kind vehicle that's just for Destro. It is a common vehicle that any Iron Grenadier or Mars soldier employee can fly into battle.
Interesting, yes.
And, in 1980s Real American Hero continuity, it seemed like there was just one Despoiler, and it was just for Destro.
Yes, and speaking of which, these 2 issues again, we have previously talked about G.I. Joe being, about the G.I. Joe team and the Cobras, but also a key element of that being the vehicles, and that you should hope to see in any given G.I. Joe issue an example of a G.I. Joe or Cobra vehicle being used. And we have the Despoilers here. We also have the ASPs, ASPS, on the Tomax and Xamot's side. Yeah, Assault System Pods. And Destro, I think he notes it's interesting that he developed them, but they've been developed further by Tomax and Xamot. They've got on their hands on my anti-aircraft pod design and got them functional. I'm almost impressed. And they're crimson as well, which is a bit of a nod to a release in 2004, the Operation Crimson Sabotage box set, which had crimson ASPs.
Which itself, what was that first? What were those first 1 or 2 Sears exclusive releases in like '84, where there was a Cobra vehicle that was now redone in red? The cat is the black recolor of the Mobat, but it's got red bits.
And you're thinking of the SMS, which was the Cobra Sentry and Missile System, which was a Sears exclusive from 1985. So it was a red reprint of the Hiss with the G.I. Joe original missile system, now painted in black and red.
Good, thank you. Who's Overkill? Because on the last page, so Destro has come out of his secret family Arctic
crypt or whatever. Yep.
Tomb.
He describes it. Yeah.
Church, where he goes to talk crazy to his family, and outside in the snow there is a person who we know is a woman because she's on the cover to the next issue. Mm-hmm. And she's in snow gear and has a sniper rifle, and she says, "Chameleon to Overkill. Everything is on schedule. Destro thinks he's a very clever little boy, but I'm going to shoot him," she basically says. And I thought, have we seen Overkill? No, have we known that we have seen Overkill so far in the Energon universe?
No. So this is the first mention of Overkill in the Energon universe thus far. Obviously, it's a name that we recognize as being the Bat leader, who has been seen in both the ARA continuity from Larry Hama now. He appeared in the Murder by Assassination arc in one issue, and has also appeared in the Devil's Due continuity several times. So, and that being inspired by the toy release. So he's had a few different releases, and with quite different appearances across those releases.
But the toy release goes all the way back to 1992 and is the Bat leader, but doesn't look like a bat. Looks like just a completely different, humanoid robot. There's some black, but it's also gold and red, and he's got a very different head face, and his chest is green but somewhat translucent, and he came with a giant red backpack that could make noises, and he is in 1 or 2 episodes of the Deke cartoon. Everyone, good news. Also, I'm sorry. So, okay, so please continue. So we have met versions of someone named Overkill.
And yeah, all we know is that it's the name of the person that Chameleon is reporting to, presumably via, some sort of radio or phone signal or whatever. But at this point in time, we don't know very much other than the fact that she's not reporting into Tomax and Xamot, which is, supporting all of the rest of it, that Tomax and Xamot are saying that they've got nothing to do with this attempt on Destro's life, whereas he's continuing to assume that it's them plotting against him.
So, Mark, do we assume that this is Cobra Commander or Cobra La, who has sent Chameleon, this new character, this blonde woman in red and black, to kill Destro? We're assuming that Tomax and Xamot are not lying, that they are going to honor their agreement. They're not also trying to kill Destro. Because on page, I think it's 11, Tomax and Xamot ask a particular Crimson Guardsman who's not wearing a helmet. He's a particular guy. He's a white guy with blonde hair. And they ask him to report. And I thought, oh, here's a Crimson Guardsman with his helmet off. I think this is just sort of no one. I think this is just any Crimson Guardsman. And he's not going to become a specific person. But then later I thought, oh, well, maybe that guy's a specific person.
Yeah. No, I think I would probably take it on face value that there is probably a specific person called Overkill. And I would make the assumption that they are working on behalf of Cobra Commander at this point, that Cobra Commander had a bit of a falling out with Destro in issue number 1. He was sort of telling him off for, making such a sort of public display in terms of supporting that invasion of Dark Clonia. And maybe he's got some clever long game that he's, playing 4-dimensional chess and by putting Destro versus the Crimson Twins, he's somehow, I guess, weakening them in their own right, and sort of going to bring about the events that mean that they will join the wider Cobra side by the end of these 5 issues.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. One last thing. While we're talking about vehicles and vehicle colors and vehicles alluding to other vehicles, that red recolor of the ASP, the gun pod, is being driven out into battle by what looks like a Stinger, except it doesn't have missiles, and it's a bluish green. And so I thought, okay, maybe Tomax and Xamot have also stolen the Stinger design from Destro and Mars, and this is sort of their first pass at it. It's not yet, red like they're going to do their colors, or it's not, fully black with the missiles like Destro and Mars, or this is just a more general four-wheel vehicle like a Jeep, that kind of happens to look like the Vamp and the Stinger, and it's green because it's just a military vehicle.
Yeah. I took this as being the Vamp design that Destro has put out into the world, which all sorts of sides are, making use of. And so when he's talking to Flag at the end of issue 3, for example, and sort of alluding to the fact that that the US military kind of need Destro because he supplies them as well. This is one part of it, that he's putting these Vamps and these ASPs out into the world, and whoever's got deep enough pockets to buy his arms will be able to.
Let's talk about issue 3.
Yeah, so we've got this cool kind of action sequence where Chameleon is sort of outside the doors of the tomb, and he's able to shoot Destro and somehow also depower his wrist rockets. Destro surprises her that he sort of survives that initial shot. He says, "I wear a lot of Kevlar," and expresses his surprise that her head should be missed, fine red mist, as Mr. Harmon might say, and because somehow his comms are dead, his rockets won't fire. So she's using a localized EMP or something similar. And then the drones appear again from issue 1. I was wondering when I'd see those again. Clearly, Chameleon must be on the same side of the person who launched the drone attack all the way back in issue 1. And in parallel, Scrap Iron and Mercer are sort of digging into these things. So we're kind of understanding more about these drones as the attack is underway. And Mercer comes to the conclusion he thinks that it can't be the Crimson Twins because their focus is on manpower and market manipulation, not weapons tech. So he wants to tell Destro that he thinks it isn't them behind this thing, and then they're also beginning to start thinking about how this thing is being powered, because the only other technology that they've seen on this kind of same level is powered by Energon. So a bit of a mystery about where this tech has come from as well.
I like this conversation between Mercer and Scrap Iron. I love Scrap Iron. I have missed him very much for hundreds of issues in Real American Hero. That's a character with a ton of potential. I also like getting to know Mercer, who has never appeared in the Larry Hama Real American Hero comic. And, when we have seen him in other stories, he is very quickly, a good guy, or he's already a good guy who had been a bad guy. And here, and I don't know how long it's going to last, and maybe it's permanent, he's a bad guy. This is not the Mercer who has left, Cobra X Viper. And I could sort of, when he was talking to Scrap Iron for these 2 pages, and he says, "This can't be that smart. This rocket that almost hit Destro was a dud." And then Scrap Iron corrects him and explains that it could explode. I could feel my brain sliding into this lazy assumption that because Mercer is big and not a tactical guy, that he's not the smart character in the scene, and that he was going to do something boneheaded, and Scrap Iron was going to look brilliant but also insult him and say, "No, you fool, don't press that. You're an idiot." And I'd think, yes, Mercer's an idiot. And then I thought, no, there's a lot. And then the scene keeps going. Yes, Mercer says, "Oh, right." And he puts it back. But then, as you just said, Scrap Iron continues. Imagine if they start thinking for themselves. And then Mercer makes this observation that shows that he's paying attention to maybe not all the tech, all the computer stuff, but who Scrap Iron is as a character. And he says, "Don't act like that doesn't excite you. You're a creepy little pyrophile, and I hate you." And Scrap Iron says, "I can understand that."
It's great dialogue.
And then Mercer makes this neat connection. He says, "But if this hardware is really so cutting edge, it might not be theirs." And then, as you alluded to before, he makes this distinction. There might be a third faction here. And he walks out and he says, we need to find Destro and bring him in. Like, we need to tell him that this third faction that we don't know about might be a going concern. So I really like this scene for all sorts of reasons. Mercer is a favorite character of mine because that first action figure is so cool. He does just a few things in the animated movie and they're all really cool. And here he's, gigantic and he's not that version of the character, yet. Scrap Iron's a favorite. This 2-page scene is the kind of scene I love in comics where the characters are pushing the story forward, but they're doing it through their own smarts. The writer is not sort of artificially, having, how do I phrase this? It's motivated from sort of what the characters do know and how smart they actually are. And it's a nice change of pace, of rhythm from this funny and sort of desperate fight between Destro and Chameleon before and after. You get this 2-page, you have a scene that's outside, it's all white, they're explosions. People are running and fighting. You have this scene that's inside, it's all blue and green. It's 2 people calmly talking. And yet also this crazy bomb might go off. You have this very subtle, and I don't know that anyone did this on purpose. You have this very subtle linkage where in the final panel of the Mercer Scrap Iron scene, Mercer's walking toward us. And then in the first panel of the going back to Destro and Chameleon, Destro is running towards the Despoiler. The little, visual parallel there. Andrea Milana gets to draw the Mars headquarters that the exterior that Tom Riley had drawn in Duke issue number 1, maybe issue 2. So, every time we do one of these interviews and we say, how are you coordinating? Because there's all this stuff to draw. And they say, yeah, they're sending us pictures of what the other artists have drawn. Like this. Should we talk about this flashback? You're European. How do you feel about Oliver Cromwell?
That guy, that schmuck. So we've got a nice sort of flashback to the English Civil War, and a great little Easter egg here is that the Destro origin told here in these few pages is first referenced on the 1988 figure, the gold masked Destro file card, which
wait, before you read that, can we go back to the 1983 file card?
Okay.
And just set up sort of how little we knew. So there, he maintains a luxurious lifestyle around the world. Destro provides high-tech arms to any side able to meet his price and will incite war where it does not exist. He dons his silver battle mask of family tradition and enters battle himself, either with Cobra Command, Destro is their major weapons supplier, or against them if it's better for business.
Okay. And then on the 1988 file card, it says, and I'll do this in a Sean Connery accent, which is how Harmer says he envisions Destro. One of Destro's ancestors started a family fortune by selling arms to both sides during the English Civil War. One ancestor was caught up in the act by Cromwell's men and was made to wear an uncomfortable steel mask. They had to punish him, but they still wanted his weapons. Since that time, the Lairds of Destro clan have worn the mask with pride and passed it down to the succeeding generations.
The opening scene of G.I. Joe, The Rise of Cobra. We don't start in present day with Christopher Eccleston, Doctor Who, right? We don't start with him as Destro. We start, I think I actually have that movie ripped on my hard drive and I'm sitting in front of my computer, but I'm not going to go find it. But I'm pretty sure the movie starts with a flashback a couple hundred years ago to someone in Europe putting a mask on an earlier Destro and saying, bad. And then we crossfade to modern day Christopher Eccleston, who says, I'm Destro, I'm selling you stuff.
We are not going to kill you, McKellen. We are going to make an example of you. So that no man, woman, nor child may ever see your treacherous face again. You shall wear this mask for the term of your natural life. No! 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 No!
For nearly 4 centuries, my ancestors have been the greatest creators of weaponry in the world.
So it's across various continuities. It's something that has been touched on a number of times, but here it's probably shown in as gory a way as it has ever has.
Yeah. So here's a 3-page flashback. It is initially narrated from the present day by our Destro, but in one of those sort of reasonable sort of hand-waving magic tricks, we get into the flashback with word balloons. Mm-hmm. So Destro's narrating it. He couldn't know what his ancestor and the other guy actually said in that room several hundred years earlier, but I think it's fair as a visual device that we have also seen in TV and movies, where instead of having a disembodied narrator describing what you see, and then you don't get the sound from the visual of the flashback, we just cut into, actors or drawn characters performing the dialogue that, did or close enough happened back then. And so I looked at this and I thought 2 things. I thought, one, Oliver Cromwell, there is some British history that I learned in 9th grade, and I don't really remember. But is he buried in Westminster Abbey? Have I stood in front of his tomb? Who's the really important person who's buried in?
There's lots of people buried in Westminster
Abbey. Thank you. Correct. What I meant to say was, can you read my mind? Who did my dad really want me to? Anyway, so that's one. I wanted to see sort of as, if you and I went to see the Nicolas Cage movie National Treasure, at the end of it, you might turn and say to me, so Tim, as an American, how do you feel about this fun, silly conspiracy theory that's been grafted onto some of your American history? And I might say, I don't know, it's just a story. I'm not really concerned. There are a million stories. I'm neither offended nor all that entertained. Burn. Take that, National. I haven't seen the movie. So did you, as an Englishman, Mark, did this scene in any way jump out at you more than another G.I. Joe scene or flashback might? Or is it just no, Tim, lots of stories get told about the pharaohs and kings and queens and the emperors and your presidents, and we all get sort of fun added layers.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the added layer is that we probably, when we're in school talking about this or on documentaries or whatever, that we as Brits we're probably more likely to have a passing familiarity with the history of the thing, and it rather than it being less well known possibly from a country where you're more focused on your own country's history. So in Britain, we might have some history lessons that will cover the in broad sweeps the English Civil War. We won't ever have any coverage in our history lessons about the American Civil War, and it's probably a similar sort of thing going on in your schools. So I wouldn't say it wasn't a particularly strong, resonating story. It's seems in keeping with kind of the lore of Destro that as we know it from the file cards and from the other media that have covered this sort of thing before. But yeah, I think it was more of sort of an appreciation of it being quite well handled rather than it being something that I felt like personally resonated with, as a as a native of the land.
We can remind, part of also why I'm asking is we can remind our listeners, Dan Waters is English. And so maybe in the back of my mind, I thought, okay, this writer is not going to sort of get this wrong or if this writer is going out on a limb, maybe he has a little more leeway because he's not like an American who's sort of imposing his own sensibility onto another country's history or identity. The other thing that I thought when I saw this scene is that the Destro allusion to an ancestor wearing an uncomfortable mask has always struck me as a reference to the Man in the Iron Mask.
Yeah.
And all I know about the Man in the Iron Mask is, one of the Three Musketeers movies and that episode of DuckTales, which is called, you can guess it, The Duck in the Iron Mask. And I was reminded that the Man in the Iron Mask, that's French. It's not English. And when is Cromwell? When is that war? Oh, 1638. Okay. All right. The Man in the Iron Mask, that is a little later. That's the second half of the 1600s and into the very early 1700s. And I don't think I knew this, or maybe I learned this in 9th grade in my European history class. That was a real person. And then the novel and novels and movies and sort of unofficial novel sequels from then and more recently are extrapolations of something that actually took place in history. That was a real person, and we don't know who that person was. There are guesses. And so when I thought, oh yeah, isn't the Destro thing kind of the Man in the Iron Mask? Well, not really, because that's French.
Yeah, but I guess it's the French story as the jumping off point, and then they're transposed into the Destro family history. What did you think about the appearance of General Flag here on the last page?
Okay, so I was surprised. Once we get to this 3-page flashback and it's being narrated by present day James Destro, I thought, okay, he's talking to someone. He's not talking to me, the reader. And he's not talking to Scrap Iron or Mercer or Chameleon. He's talking to someone new. Oh, he's probably talking to Cobra Commander. He's gone back to him or he's been captured. And then after the flashback, Destro is seated and handcuffed. And, he's just been on the run. So we've jumped ahead a couple of days or a week because he did get out of there, but barely. And he needs to go someplace safe. And then he then explains this. I needed to go someplace safe because, all of my home bases and safe houses might be compromised if they found my really, really secret family crazy shouting chamber, which I love. So I thought, okay, he's talking to Cobra Commander. That's who's off panel. And then you turn the page and you see some general stars on a shoulder and a green sleeved arm. And I thought, okay, that's not Cobra Commander because they wear blue. But also, as you said, Destro now paraphrases himself. He says in the flashback that what his ancestor did was sell to both sides. Oh, I've been caught? Well, but I also sell to you. So what are you going to do? And now Destro in the present day says, I've been caught. I gave myself up to you. But what are you going to do? I sell to you. And so I think you're asking me two questions. What do I think of this first appearance of Energon Universe General Flag, in that here is an established G.I. Joe character who's making an Energon Universe debut? And does that complicate things with the formation of G.I. Joe? How we know that there are two teams from the Free Comic Book Day special / Energon Universe special, that short Duke story that Jason Howard drew that was actually the epilogue to the Duke miniseries. And remind me, that ends with Hawk, right? Telling Flint and Lady J that they're two teams, telling us, the reader. Okay.
Yeah.
So I thought, oh, is this Flag, is he a higher general than Hawk?
So he is General Flag, and Hawk, as we know him at the moment, is Colonel Hawk.
Oh,
so he's
excellent.
a higher military rank.
Okay, yes. General Flag is definitely higher than Colonel Hawk. Thank you. Okay, so I think you're asking me two questions. A, Tim, how does it feel that this established G.I. Joe character but who died in 1983 in issue 16 of G.I. Joe Marvel. How do you feel that here he is showing up for the first time in this new continuity when he's been a little bit of a presence ever since then, but we haven't seen him because he hasn't shown up? And B, how do you feel that in taking in Destro and in Destro admitting that G.I. Joe or the U.S. government buys from Mars, that there's some kind of shady business or blood on the hands of Flag or the U.S. military or the military-industrial complex? How do you feel that Flag is now a morally gray character? I think those are the two questions you're asking me.
Let's say yes.
I think it's totally fair to bring in Flag into the Energon universe because, okay, so he never showed up in the Devil's Due continuity, right? Because I know in our other Disavowed episodes where we're talking about the end of the Devil's Due continuity in 2007, Flag doesn't visually appear, but there's a reference to someone that he knows at the end of the Devil's Due story, which of course is the continuation of the Marvel story. But that like seeds back to like 1982 and like pre-G.I. Joe. So we really only see Flag from somewhere between issues 1 and 16 of Marvel US, and then his funeral a couple issues later. So I think since we're starting over with this new continuity, it makes perfect sense to bring in, you know, new versions of any character from G.I. Joe history. And as for him being morally gray, it makes me a little sad because I want all the Joes to be good guys, and I don't want Flag to turn into sort of immediately like a juggler, you know, the cadre of, I don't know if are they corrupt or are they just morally ambiguous Pentagon officials, generals that Hama introduces about halfway through the Marvel run, and then the Devil's Due run dipped its toe back into several times. I don't want Flag to be a bad guy or a good guy who does bad things. I want all the Joes to be good guys who do good things. But the Energon universe is unbound by any Larry Hama code of G.I. Joe writing ethics. And these comics are going to be hard PG-13. And I also think this scene is quite realistic. I'm sure the U.S. government buys from all sorts of morally ambiguous, if not buys, employs all sorts of morally ambiguous, you know, agencies. It's like, well, you know, we can't get over to that faraway country. We don't have a diplomatic contingent there. One of our people is held hostage. We need to hire some bad guys to go kill some worse guys. You know, that I've seen those movies.
Mm-hmm.
What's fun here is that it is Destro's miniseries. And so the scene is from his point of view. And the scene begins with him. He gets most of the dialogue and, quote, screen time, I'll say panel space. And he gets the final panel and he's smiling.
Yeah, and a little bit harder to read, maybe. When we've seen him before in kind of similar panels in issue 1, it was a kind of slightly more manic, gleeful smile. And here it's a little bit harder to penetrate, but I think there's it's a sort of sinister, knowing smile. I guess a sort of a slight, not happiness, but you know, a
smug.
A slight smugness of feeling that perhaps he's got the upper hand here in this you know, in this relationship with Flag. That he's the prisoner, but maybe Flag needs him more than he needs the other way around. And you know, he says, "I'm listening," and he's already kind of opens that morally grey door to at least being willing to listen to whatever it is that Destro has to say.
But this whole scene with Destro talking to Flag puts me in mind. I mean, this is a big extrapolation, and this is a, you know, sort of a darkening or like a poisoning of this idea. But going back to that very first Destro toy file dossier, he dons his silver battle mask and enters battle himself, either with Cobra Command or against them if it's better for business. Next paragraph. Destro respects the G.I. Joe team for their combat skills and expertise, but abhors them for wasting such skills to maintain peace. He's totally dedicated to seeing them undermined, subverted, or destroyed. I don't remember what episode it is of the cartoon, but there's a specific line where Destro's there and someone refers to Destro's sense of honor. There are one or two times in the G.I. Joe cartoon where he quietly helps the Joes because Cobra Commander is going too far or something else is out of control. And, Flint or whoever it is sort of understands that this is about respect. And so, we're reading a miniseries about a villain. This is not the Scarlet or Duke miniseries. So it's going to have different feelings. I'm pretty traditional and like a grumpy older comics reader when Marvel or DC give series to villains. I think that like what Priest did on Deathstroke is really extraordinary. And I think maybe that most recent Joker series where I think Commissioner Gordon is sort of tracking him. I think that's a cool angle. But in the 70s, a series with the Joker as the main, a series called The Joker only lasted less than a year because he's the antagonist. Is he that interesting without Batman? Like, I think we really want to read Batman stories where he tries to stop the Joker. I don't know that Joker stories where he goes and robs banks and then, gets away. And, similarly, like Venom, I know Venom has been a good guy for a lot longer than he's been a bad guy. But I think Venom is really interesting in opposition to Spider-Man. And I know he's in like 15 comics where he's a bad guy and then he decides he's a good guy. And ever since then, he's been a good guy. So I know I'm going against the tide of history by a volume of comics plus several movies. But to me, Venom is interesting as a dark mirror of Spider-Man. And Venom wants to eat Spider-Man's brains because he's mad that Peter got him fired. And then, this alien skin infected Eddie Brock. And I don't ever buy it when Eddie Brock says in all these comics and movies, I'm going to go stop the bad guys. And then he beats them up even more and maybe kind of beats their brains. I feel like that's actually not the sort of core character, but Marvel and DC eventually make a lot of their villains into heroes. Magneto, Harley Quinn, etc. Deadpool. But Destro has always been so interesting. So I feel like a Destro, solo story in the Larry Hama Real American Hero comic, like we've seen once or twice, this miniseries, I'm totally on board. I feel like this still does represent the character.
Very good. So I think we covered most of the things I wanted to talk about. One last thing was Chameleon. We definitely think that's a story of Colton Ritz from issue 1, right?
Oh, right. Yeah. Yes.
Well, one of us obviously thought it more than the other initially.
I think this would be a good time to just remind our listeners.
Co-presenter. Oh, right.
Okay, so for people who are either new to G.I. Joe because of all the Skybound Energon universe energy, or lapsed fans who maybe don't remember the year 2000 all that well for G.I. Joe, I think it's a good quick reminder that Chameleon as a G.I. Joe word, initially that's Zartan's swamp skier, but no one ever calls it that, right, in the 80s. But in the year 2000, Hasbro re-releases some figures from in the early 2000s. Hasbro re-releases some figures from the 80s, and in a couple cases, Hasbro wants to release the Baroness and another figure, Roadblock, and legal doesn't clear those names. Hasbro has lost the rights to use those names, or Hasbro feels like it may be sued if it tries to use those names, even if maybe it does have the legal right. And so they come up with placeholder names, substitute names. And so there's this figure released in the year 2000 in a 2-pack with a Cobra Commander named Chameleon. And it's the Baroness. And if you read her file card, it's the Baroness. And it's the Baroness mold from 1984. And there's no confusion in any of the comic books that are happening then. The Baroness people don't start calling the Baroness Chameleon. There's no other character that looks like her, but is called the Chameleon until the IDW run, right?
Yep.
And in the Cobra series written by Christos Gage and Mike Costa, remind us quickly, Mark, who is Chameleon, or who does she look like, or who is she's supposed to be sort of a stand-in for?
So she is essentially, she is a bit of a Baroness alike in the series initially, but is very much her own character. And yeah.
Okay. And so here in the new Energon universe, it looks like the writers and artists and editors are taking that name as a white woman with long hair in a cool costume who's some kind of bad guy, and then creating a new character around it. So it's not someone who looks like the Baroness, or you might confuse for the Baroness. She doesn't have black hair and she has blonde hair, but she's somehow related to Mars or Cobra Commander. She's in black and red. And she has some kind of relationship with Destro. In this case, she wants to kill him.
Very good. Yeah, so doubtless we will find out more about her before the series is out, and we know from spoilers that she is likely to be a character that is going to hang about for a while.
Is that because she's on the cover to G.I. Joe #1?
That is that was the thing I was alluding to. Yes.
Okay. I don't think that's a spoiler.
No, only mild. And one of the reasons I thought it might be this Colton Ritz is that from my favourite line of dialogue for these two issues, in the fight between Destro and Chameleon, there's the point at which she says to him, "Ew, stop talking, you're making it weird." Which is a bit like that sort of Valley talk that maybe she talked in issue 1.
Did we any Talking Joe people we kind of know show up in the letters pages?
They do, Tim, don't they? So we have got a lovely long letter from Scotty in the pages of Destro issue 3, that being a friend of the show, Scotty Cameron, who has previously sent in voicemails for us to include in these episodes. So great to see a letter from him there. And even more fun there is that he calls out Talking Joe. So he says, "I love Destro, and it's impressive that a newcomer pulled it off this well. Yeah, I listened to the Talking Joe interview." Thanks for the shout out, Scotty. Another Talking Joe mention in the letters pages of a comic from Skybound. Great.
I can't wait for Skybound to inevitably reach out to us to offer us a full page ad in the back of the comic to just promote this podcast, so more Energon Universe readers can listen to our show where we talk gushingly about the Energon Universe, and the cycle continues.
Speaking of talking gushingly about the Energon Universe, do you want to give these two issues a Yo-Jo score?
Oh yeah, 7. These are great. Just peppy. I mean, they're definitely, the middle of a story. It's not the sort of shocking ending or satisfying ending or stunning beginning or, feeling of something all new that's familiar. But I love how all the chess pieces are moving. There are some new things. There's some reveals. There's some great interactions. There's great action. Bressan's art is very good. Not quite what I want out of G.I. Joe comics, but very, very good, and I like it. Andrea Milana is a great fill-in artist. I love his stuff. Adriano Lucas's colors for both issues. Great covers. Great. 7.
Very good. I think I'm in the same boat. I'll give it a 7. I like the way that each issue could kind of stand alone but be part of a greater whole. Similar to you, Andre Bressan is not an artist that I'm particularly connecting with here, but I can appreciate the work that is being done, and there's certainly some good visuals within his issue. Really appreciates the return of Andrea Milana. I think his artwork is great, and I really hope that he gets given a series to continue with some more work in the Energon universe. And yeah, interested to see, as always, where this story goes next, which will be on sale September 18th. That is Destro issue number 4. So you can find us talking about Destro issue number 4 and more in the future as Talking Joe continues to cover the Energon universe and more besides from Skybound. Look for some Devil's Due coverage as well as the latest issues of A Real American Hero from Larry Hama as they come out. You can find out more about us over at the website. talkingjoe.co.uk is that website with links to Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and more. We've just, as today of recording, I noticed that we're now at 700 subscribers on YouTube. So it continues to tick up. Look forward to the day that we hit the big round 1,000. So if you're not yet subscribed on YouTube, do go on over there and give us a subscribe. We are also on Patreon, patreon.com/talkingjoe. A big thanks to our backers, Richard, Sam, Bill, Christopher, Justin, Rob, Shane, Simon, Chris, Joe, Craig, Frank, and Mike, who are all getting early access to episodes as well as some exclusive content. They have currently got early access to a couple of the interviews that we did at Joe Fest that haven't yet gone into the mainstream, and also they're getting to see our coverage of the Devil's Due era a little earlier than everyone else. So that is my plug for all things Talking Joe. Tim, what have you got to talk about which is not Talking Joe?
I have 2 creative partners in New York, and with some freelance editors, we write and record and produce funny, smart video essays on television and film. That's at our YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/@AtomicAbe. I have a comic book store in Somerville, Massachusetts. Somerville borders Cambridge and Boston. That's Hub Comics. And I have a blog where I write about G.I. Joe, arealamericanbook.com.
Very good. And a reminder for everyone, if you are listening to this and trying to plug holes in your comic collection, Hub Comics has got a good G.I. Joe back issue selection. So we are all done talking about Destro 2 and 3 and talking in general for this week. So until next time, remember,
Nobody Beats Talking Joe, an international podcast.
Laters.
Oh, all these Eric Canete pages from Iron Man, Enter the Mandarin, are on sale at Essential Sequential. Oh man. Oh, so exciting.